Hi students, it's Mrs. T, and in this series of lectures we're going to look at subsistence strategies. This information corresponds with chapter 11 in the 12th edition of our textbook. I think it's going to be somewhere around chapter 11 if you're in the 10th edition or the 11th edition, like we said was okay to do. But subsistence strategies, this is about food getting. Actually, subsistence means a little bit more than simply food, but in the previous discussions that we've had about population, migration, development, these issues about population size and sustainability usually have to do with food production, food availability, and how do we supply the numbers of people in our population with the amount of food they need to live long, healthy lives. Part of the Human Development Index, right? Life expectancy, comfort, education level, these kinds of things that are part of Human Development Index issues. So, I actually don't think that the term or the concept subsistence strategy is in your textbook. So, you need to be able to describe it well, and so make sure that you put some really good information in your notes when I describe it for you now. So, I'll start with the word strategy. This is an easy one to define. It's a plan of attack. Okay, so how are you going to take care of something? You have to have a strategy or a plan to achieve a certain goal. And so a strategy is a plan. So, subsistence, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated. It's way more complicated. We're going to look at it primarily as a food getting situation. How do populations supply food for the members in that society? But subsistence really means survival from day to day, week to week, month to month, etc. Like, so how do populations survive over time? There is an interplay between human-environment interaction, movement, what's available in the region, etc. Like, all of the issues of Mr. Help can be discussed and pinpointed in these topics that we're going to discuss this week. Okay, so subsistence strategies is a plan for survival in the very, very basic sense. But in order to really fully understand it, let's make sure that we understand that human survival includes not only food, which we're going to focus on heavily in these discussions, but also clean water resources like we have looked at in previous lectures, particularly in regard to infrastructure. Remember, we watched a video with a clip that showed us some of the urbanization and the infrastructure in a village in Brazil, and the water resources were not clean, and it was making people sick. And maybe you chose the story of cholera video when we did the Mr. Help video analysis earlier on in the semester. And if you did that, or remember any of the sections in our textbook up to now that talk about disease vectors, such as rivers and water systems in general, water really spreads pathogens and diseases really easily. And so you have to make sure to survive from day to day and to have a long life expectancy, as the human animal is capable of doing, you have to make sure that you have safe and clean water resources that won't make you sick when you drink them. And you have to be able to have enough water that enables you to grow food, if that's the kind of subsistence strategy that you live in. But you have to have enough food for your entire lifespan to be supported. You know, if you are a female, you have to have enough food to be able to carry an offspring through your entire gestation process, and then be able to feed with your own body resources, feed that offspring into their first couple of years of life, or even longer in some cases. So, subsistence strategy includes those two things, and also shelter. How do we interact with our environment in order to provide shelter for ourselves? Some places you don't need necessarily a great deal of shelter in order to survive 12 months out of the year. Other places where you have great variety of weather systems and the climate has a wide range of temperatures and storm systems blowing through and things like that, then the type of structure that you have for shelter and the type of of enclosure, that you use not only for the roof over your head, but also clothing, different types of clothing to shelter our body just from the temperature, and not just from hailstones, on a roof or something. All of these kinds of things are included in subsistence strategies. A very clever student of mine in the past also pointed out that oxygen is definitely necessary for survival, and just so you'll know, air quality is something that we discuss in geography class, because depending upon where you are in the world and the predominant flow of the jet stream or a lot of other environmental factors that shape the flow of air or put a cap over cities. For instance, Salt Lake City is famous for the inversion, right? And it keeps like smog down inside those mountains down close to the Great Salt Lake. So these kinds of air quality issues are also part of a subsistence strategy for modern societies that produce a lot of the pollution that causes these kinds of issues to be issues to begin with. Okay, so subsistence strategies, in the very first part of this chapter, it goes very quickly through some of the other subsistence strategies other than agriculture and industrialization, which I've got down here low on the board. But let's talk about foraging and a little bit of horticulture at the same time, because these are the oldest subsistence strategies. Foraging is really the oldest subsistence strategy of all the millennia that humans have been on the planet. Foraging is the reason you and I are here today.